Good morning, and it is so pretty. What a beautiful morning it is. Hi, it's Darren, and this is actually chapter 10 of the story, and we are already a third of the way through, if you can even believe that. And so I hope you guys are liking it so far. Today's chapter 10, is called The Problem. And as I mentioned last week in the church, it's really where my story starts to get a little more chronological. So there's going to be a lot of details from the past that I've talked about. From here on out, though, the story really gets much more chronological. So there might be some cliffhangers here and there, and you'll just have to wait and see what happens. So with that, I want to get started with the problem. So in beginning this chapter, I want to pose three sort of rhetorical questions. The first is, do you know that feeling when you've done something wrong? Like you know that you're gonna get in trouble, probably like when you're a little kid, you probably felt this a little more intensely, but you know you're gonna get in trouble or that the consequences are going to be unpleasant, kind of unfortunate, but they haven't quite happened yet. It's just that, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. Second question is this. It's kind of morbid, but really, have you ever been driving and maybe just like it's a little more dangerous road than normal, and you just wonder what it would be like to go off the road? Like not deal with stuff anymore. I know that's a lot, but it's my second question. And my third one is this. Have you ever felt, because of just kind of your whole life in general, several things around you, that you weren't good enough? And that if you messed up, things like they really might be over. Like you're walking on eggshells, kind of a feeling. So those are my three questions that I wanted to start out with. Growing up as a gay guy in a super little town with a very conservative Christian upbringing, these three questions began swirling in my head as a very, very young, innocent, didn't know any better little boy. I was probably 6 when I first remember having one of these sort of thoughts enter my mind. So I was at a public pool in our little hometown, and I distinctly remember it being one of the first times I ever recall seeing a guy with his clothes off. He didn't have any clothes on. And I was staring at him naked in the locker room, and I distinctly remember my dad grabbing my arm and pulling me and saying, "Stop staring." And I mean, I was a pretty bright little kid, and I knew that I wasn't in trouble per se, but I knew that I wasn't just like being told to stop staring because it was impolite to stare. I knew that there was more to it. As a little boy, one of the most recurring compliments I got all the time was that I was smart. You know, it was my thing. You know, Darren's bright. He's going to be a smart guy. And so from a very young age, I was smart enough to know actually what being gay meant, and that there was definitely something wrong with me. And there were a lot of reasons for this. So my dad had 2 LGBT cousins, and he and many other family members talked really poorly about them behind their backs growing up. I really remember this. And I knew what all of the names that they called them meant, and they were nasty. And in addition to that, I knew what the preacher was going on and on and on and on about at church. And I knew, even as a little kid, that the fire and brimstone sermons implied that sinners go to hell. And even as a little kid, I had begun making a very long mental list of all these things that will send you to hell. So when I was 7 or 8, I asked my mom if I was gay. I remember this so specifically. I came home after school, and we got out of the car, we went in the house, and I said, "Mom, can I talk to you in your room, just the 2 of us?" She said, "Okay." We went in there, and she shut the door, and she said, "What's up?" And I just said, "Mom, am I gay?" I didn't say to her, "I am." I asked her, "Am I gay?" And just as quickly as this had started, she goes, "Oh, no, you're not gay." And then she said, "And we're not going to talk about this anymore." And she stood up and opened her bedroom door and said, "Go to your room." And that was it. That was it. A lot of anxiety as a little kid because I couldn't figure out this thing, but I was smart enough to know what the thing was and that it wasn't good. So, like I mentioned, I had heard that being gay was like the worst sin ever. I had heard what my dad said about his gay cousins growing up. And I just knew in my soul that somehow what they were saying, like, it was really bad. It wasn't good. And not just because of the nature of what they were saying, but because I knew that I had what they were talking about. Like, I was bad too. A little bit of a problem, isn't it? So throughout my years in elementary school, I didn't really pay too much attention to this problem. Like, I knew that it existed and I knew that I was kind of dealing with it, but it wasn't until about the age of 9 or 10 that I really remember it becoming a bigger problem. There was this instance when we were having a Sunday lunch at my Nana and Papa's, and I was standing in the food line. We always had lots of people over, so they served food sort of buffet style. And I remember that after we prayed, I was standing in line, gonna get my food, and I was humming, or I was singing the words to this song from my, at the time, very favorite movie, Sister Act. And so I was like, "Nothing you could say could tear me away from my God." And in the movie, they say, "My God." I didn't even know as a kid that that was like a popular song and that the lyrics actually go, "My guy." So I had a relative behind me in line and he grabbed my shirt like hard and he yanked me back. And he was like, he like screamed at me. He said, "Stop singing that." And I was like so taken aback. And then he leaned in and just loud enough that I could hear, no one else could hear, he actually said, "Only fags sing that." And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I burst out crying and I like ran away from the food line. And it was the first time that I realized perhaps I wasn't the only person that knew I was bad. Turns out other people know that I'm bad too. I've got this thing. I'm not good. So as soon as that happened, I knew that I needed to start working on doing whatever I could to distract people from possibly knowing this thing about me. Like, that was no longer going to be an option. I mean, I'd always been doing things as a kid. I was singing, playing piano, but I distinctly remember at that time in my life, like, I'm going to be the best at piano. I'm going to be the best at singing. I'm going to take tests faster than anyone else. I'm going to be the smartest. I'm going to do anything that distracts people from ever calling me that name again. I don't want to be called a fag. Are you kidding? That was like, my heart had cracked in half. And so that's what I did for as long as I could, anything to distract. And it worked. I mean, I won every little competition. I was known for this and known for that. I was just a little performing monkey. I would, like, the first moment you met me, I'm like, "Oh, you have a piano. Let me play it for you." Woof. And I was like playing before they could even talk to me because I wanted that skill, that talent, and that thing that I was good at. I wanted that to trump anything else. I was not going to go through that thing that happened in the food line again. So, you know, it worked for a while, but then you enter this magical little thing called middle school. And middle school is really where the bullying began in my life, and trying to distract everybody kind of stopped working. So I was called a lot of names. You know, like, people are called names in school. I think it happens to a lot of us, but I was called a lot of names. And people made a lot of fun of me because of my super high-pitched voice. I mean, I sounded exactly like a little girl. I was just, it was up there. And, but of course, and this didn't help, I enjoyed all of the total cliche, stereotypical gay things that society has placed on gay guys that you would expect a young little gay teenager to like. I was in band. I was in choir. I was still in boy choir. I took piano lessons. I was in home ec. I was cooking. I was sewing. I was, every one of those activities. I was almost always the only guy. So that didn't help things either. So, it was just like, it was coming at me from every direction. But things in middle school were nothing compared to what happened in high school. High school is when kids started getting really mean. Really mean. I was being smashed into lockers, just kicked in the hall, elbowed in class. They'd come up and knock all the crap out of my hands. This kind of stuff was happening every single day. And of course, the name calling, really mean name calling. And I told the school counselors about it, because that's what you're supposed to do. But they didn't really care too much. I actually remember specifically in late freshman year, I was in a chemistry class, and this kid from across the classroom, he called me a fag from across the room, and the teacher at the front kind of smiled and just turned around and kept lecturing. The whole class heard it. It was coming at me from every direction. And I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't want it. I didn't want to be called that. I didn't even know what it was, quite honestly. I knew that people hated it, and it just kept coming at me all the time. I was this kind of quiet, shy kid in the halls, and I don't know how these rumors about me being a gay fag spread, but it was like wildfire. Everyone called me names. The majority of people, even people I thought were my friends, I'd hear them talking about me. It was hard. And so I remember that life just was hard. It was hard at school. It was hard at home. And meanwhile, on top of that, to get even more personal, the great change of life was happening to me as a teenage kid. So now I'm hitting puberty. And now what I'm really scared about is that I actually I know I'm attracted to guys. I am. I know it. And it sucks. It really sucks. I can't even help it. So all that's happening. And whenever I would go home and let my dad know, Dad, school sucks and everyone's making fun of me and I don't know what to do about it, the only thing I would get from him was, well, why don't you just punch him in the face, son? Why don't you just kick him? Take care of it. Stop being a pussy. And that's all I ever heard. That's all I heard. I never heard oh, I'm sorry that they're doing that to you, or, oh my God, I'm sorry, son, that you're dealing with this. Oh no, it was just, you're a pussy. You need to deal with it. It was hard. It was really bad. And so then let's add one more little layer. In addition to everything that's happening at school and everything that's happening at home, there are still the fire and brimstone sermons happening at church. And I'm a smart guy, remember, and I'm hearing this every week. And it was overwhelming. A few years before that, and it's how I started my whole story out, I told the story of the fort and how I'm digging this hole. So there had been some things in my life that were kind of cathartic outlets that I was trying to process all this crap with, but it wasn't working. Thank God for music. I was able to play and able to sing, and sometimes that let it out. But I was struggling hard, really hard. I wasn't suicidal at that point, but I thought about can I just leave this life? Can I just want to leave life. I don't want to live. This is horrible. If I'm going to hell anyway, because I'm gay, this is awful. This sucks. So I didn't do any sports in school. I was this tall, lanky kid, and I wasn't bulking up in the muscle like every other guy was at high school. I swear they all played football or were from some farm, and I just was not that guy. And so I'm really lanky, and whenever I'd go and help my dad out, at work and stuff, because that was what I needed to do, I couldn't lift things the way that he could, and I couldn't pick things up, and I was just this weak, and it's just you're a pussy, you're stupid, you're weak. It was coming at me all the time. And I tried very hard to make find these little pocketfuls of like joy or happiness in my day. Like I did love band and I did love choir. And I had sort of this little small group of friends at high school. But outside of the music rooms, I was alone. Like I never went to a friend's house after school, like maybe a couple times. One friend in particular, this darling girl, like that was it. And the loneliness and the depression, the thoughts of not wanting to be around anymore, not being good enough for my family, like my dad doesn't even, like I'm not good enough for him either. And especially this idea that, oh, I'm not going to heaven, like that's out of the picture because I like guys. Don't know where that came from, but I do. And that's the most ultimate sin that you can commit. So I would just lay awake at night and bawl. I bawled. My body reacted so negatively at this time in my life, 15, 16. My face was so covered in acne, like I couldn't touch it. I could not touch my face. There were too many zits and sores all over it. I lost tremendous amounts of weight. I was skinny as a rail. Like everything was broken. Nothing was working. There was no happiness. And then something happened. You don't know what you don't know. One of my friends in high school unexpectedly dropped out. What's dropping out of high school? What? And she said that she was going to finish her diploma, her high school diploma, online. There was this whole online course thing that you could take, and they would send you the books, and you do all the work, and you take the tests, and you send it back in, and you do all the classes, and they give you your diploma. Oh my God. So that took no time at all. I basically forged my dad's signature on that paper. And in January of sophomore year, I dropped out and I left high school without hesitation. Like I was done, gone, bye. So I enrolled in that same online program thing as my friend. And actually, like, I just thought it was kind of stupid. And after talking to some people, figured that I could still get into college with a GED as long as my ACT and SAT scores were high enough. So 2 months later, I just went and took the GED test and got that. So here I am 15 and a half years old, and I'm done. So I went to work. And my first full-time job, because that was a rule that my dad had set, if you're going to do this, if you're leaving high school, you need to support yourself. Like you can still live here, but you're going to support yourself. Okay, great, I'll do it. First job I got was at Taco Time. I worked there for 6 months. And then I was actually hired through the drive-through of Taco Time to go work at this really upscale resort that was new in our area. It was in this area called Powell Butte. And I started working out there, and actually, it seems ridiculous to say this because I was so young, but I actually quickly started climbing this little career ladder, and all of a sudden I had a pretty damn good job for a 16-year-old. But that it was way too far from my dad's house because for the 900th time, we lived in the middle of nowhere. So I actually convinced my dad, I'm going to go live with my grandparents. I'm going to go live with Nana and Papa in town because that's way closer. And he's like, well, okay. So that's what I did. So, things were still fairly tumultuous in my later teenage years. A lot of stuff happened in the family arena that was just batshit crazy, y'all. I mean, that's why I'm writing a book. All those people are like, you should write a book. Like, here it is. It was absurd, just the things that we were going through. But in my mind, and I really believed it at the time, like the biggest problems I was facing every day, this high school crap, and my dad always calling me a pussy and I'm too weak and I'm not good enough, that was kind of dealt with in a way. Like I wasn't going to high school every day. And I saw Dad, I still respected him, and actually our relationship got much better after I moved, but I wasn't with him anymore in the house, like going through this stuff. And so those were like two big problems that are kind of sorted out, right? But that definitely left one very big problem. And that was this gay thing. And I knew I needed to sort it out. Like I had to figure this out. I did not want to go to hell. I did not want to like live in torment my whole life. And these are the only messages that had been put in my head growing up. Like, this is going to happen if you stay gay. Okay, I can't have that. So I went on this little rampage to become the best Christian I could be. I wanted to demonstrate to God that I had a willing heart. I'm totally willing. Come in, work on my life. Like, I'm ready. I want to do this. God had the power to change my heart. That's what I believed. And he had the desire to change my wants and my desires. And above all, and kind of like the fix-all to all of that, was I knew that God could send me the perfect Christian girl. Like, it could happen. It could absolutely happen. I just needed this gay thing to go away. It needed to go away. So I executed this new little formed plan, and I became a little odd, to be very truthful. I became this obedient little, will do whatever it takes, willing Christian young man. Almost as if I had a checklist that maybe I could check off these boxes and like that would work. Something was going to happen. And I went full force, y'all. I attended every church service. I went to every Bible study, every devotional, every camp, every youth rally, every youth getaway, every get-together singing thing, and I read that Bible. I read my Bible constantly, memorized passages, would do Bible studies. What does this verse mean? And remember, in the chapter of the church, the whole premise of the Church of Christ is, come, let us reason together. Like, let's battle this bitch out. So that's what I did. I was, with all due respect to my Christian friends, gung-ho, crazy Christian. Crazy Christian. If you weren't trying to be as great a Christian as I was and trying to serve God as hard as I was, you're like, what? You can't do that. You can't have part of my life. And on top of all of that, guess what was still happening? Still happening. Oh, that guy's really hot. Oh, like, why am I physically reacting to your beautiful body? Like, y'all, it's not just like gay thoughts. Like, I was a young teenage boy. Like, my 16, 17-year-old boy body couldn't help being that. Like, a 16, 17-year-old boy body. It's what boys go through, so many of them. And I was so upset with myself. I'm trying so effing hard to make the Christian thing work. And I do love God. I do love the church. I do love the Bible. I just want more than anything in my whole life for this to go away, and somehow it's still happening. Unsolicited, didn't ask for it. It's still happening. I wanted to know what it was like to hold a boy's hand. And I would fantasize about that. I would fantasize about, like, what would it be like to kiss a boy? Oh my God. But of course, this was all secret. This had to be secret. Whatever the rumors were flying around at school, whatever the reasons were that I'd been made fun of so bad and like actually dropped out of high school because of it, that didn't matter. Like, that's what they thought. None of this came from my lips. This was secret. And as you can imagine, being the only person that experiences all these emotions, like all the time, ever, and never telling anyone, that's a lot to hold in. Too much, in fact. And something definitely needed to happen fast. Because the whole I'm at the end of my rope thing, yeah, we were there. It was a problem. And that is this week's chapter. So thank you so much for listening and watching. Again, the Facebook Live video thing is working much better. So yeah, thanks again for watching. Have a fabulous, beautiful day. Next week, you'll hear what the solution was to this problem. So take care, and I will see you guys on Thursday.